Welcome back. So we mentioned in broad explanation what firewalls are. But now let's see how we can configure and run firewall on different systems. We will start off with the hardest one. As we already mentioned, we will start with Iptables. Now, Iptables is mainly Linux firewall, and it sometimes can be configured with other programs that are almost always used as an interface for Iptables. But this lecture we're going to directly interact with Iptables and not through some third-party software. So first thing to learn about Iptables is the word tables. It's consisted of different types of tables. We have filter, NAT, and mangle table. Now, filter table is mostly what we refer to as firewall. It's responsible for filtering outgoing and incoming traffic, and filter table is something that we will devote this lecture to since that is what's most important for us. The NAT table is used to redirect any connection to a different interface, or it can also be used in address translation. And the mangle table is used for special purpose processing of different types of packets. Now, we will put aside the NAT table and the mangle table, and as I already mentioned, we will focus on filter table only. Now, the filter table itself has different chains. It has the input chain, the output chain, and the forward chain. Each of these will process their own packets. For example, a packet that is being sent out of your device will be processed by output chain, while the packet that is being sent in or to your device will be processed by an input chain. And inside of those different chains, there can be different rules that are being set. Then the packet that is incoming or outgoing from your device will be processed based on those rules. Now, as we already mentioned, Iptables is default on Linux, so usually Linux systems will have them installed, but in case you have some other software that is controlling the Iptables through a different interface, it's best if you can uninstall it first, since that program might have some existing rules that might interfere with our current rules that we're going to set, and it might interfere with the Iptables themselves. Okay, nonetheless, if you don't have Linux systems, don't worry, you can just sit back and watch. For any Linux security configuration or firewall configuration, Iptables is a must thing to learn. So one day or another, you should sit and learn Iptables, and in this video, we're only going to cover basics. Okay, so first of all, to run Iptables, we are going to use terminal. So it doesn't have good user interface, it's only a command line tool, so we're going to set a bunch of different rules through different commands. To run it, you can type Iptables, it will tell you which current version is here, and to check out different commands that we can run, we can type Iptables --help, which will output the help menu for us. Now, to flush all the existing rules, or in other words, to remove any current rules, we can type Iptables -f. Now, it will give us the permission denied error, so this means that we must run this command with sudo privileges, and as soon as we type our password right here, it should flush or it should remove all the current existing rules, which we can check by typing sudo iptables -l. Once we type here, we will see that no rule is being set currently. That is because we already flushed it with the previous command, but here we can see the chains that we talked about. Now, by default, this command will output only the filter table. It won't output the mangle table or the NAT table. Here we have the filter input chain, the filter forward chain, and the filter output chain, and down below will be the rules that are set for each and every of these chains. Currently there are none. We also have in brackets that the policy is set to accept. Now this is important to figure out what this means. By default, all three will be set to accept, but besides accept, it can also be set to reject or to drop packets. Reject and drop are similar, except when drop is set, it's as if the packet never really reached our device. It just gets dropped. Now, if you want to change policy, you can do so with the next command that we're going to run, but before we do that, let's type sudo service apache2 start. And the reason we are typing this is just so we can start some service, and once we input different rules, we can double check whether the rules are set correctly based on this service that we started. In this particular case, it started Apache2, which is a web server, so currently our web page should be hosted on our local IP, which is 192.168.1.1. And if I try to visit it from my host machine and type 192.168.1.11, it will load the default Apache page, which means our web server from Kali Linux is running properly. Okay, awesome. Now if I go back and if I type once again sudo iptables-l, we were talking about this policy, and right now, since we already know that the input chain is being used to process incoming packets. So pretty much when someone visits our web server that we started, it will be processed by an input chain. Let's see whether we can change the policy to drop all requests for the input chain. To do that, we can type the command sudo iptables-policy, and then we type in the name of the chain, which in this case is input, and we type drop. Now you notice that we don't get any output, but if I type the -l command once again, the policy has been changed to drop. And now, even though our web server is running, every other device on our local network that tries to visit this web page, if I try to refresh, you will notice that it will not work, it will just load forever, and it will time out after a certain period of time. That is because our firewall, or in this case our iptables, is filtering the input chain, and its policy is set to drop all the packets that are incoming to this Kali Linux device. If I go back, as you can see, it can't reach this page. So if I revert back to accept, now it should work. As you can see, I can, without any problem, reload this page. Okay. Now, this is to disable the entire chain, should I say, or to drop all the packets that are incoming to this device, but most likely you won't really want that type of security, since even though it is secure, it's not really practical. Now, let's try to set the rule for only one particular device that we want to disable it from visiting the Apache2 web server. Now, we want everyone else to be able to visit, but only that IP address we want to disable from visiting the Apache2. Let's give it a try. Let's try to disable my host machine from visiting Apache2 web server, and to first do that, I need to know what's the IP address of this Windows 10 machine. I will type ipconfig, and it's 192.168.1.10. Okay. Now to craft the rule, I can type sudo iptables, and currently I will refer to the input chain, so I will type -I input, -s will be the source IP that I want to block. In my particular case, it will be the Windows 10 machine, or 192.168.1.10, and -j will be what I want to do with this rule. I want to make all the packets coming from this IP drop. Okay, and if I didn't explain, this -s simply stands for the IP that we will specify right after. Okay, so if I run this rule, and I go back to sudo iptables-l, we can see that the policy for input chain is accept, but the rule that has been added is for this particular machine to drop all types of packets on all protocols coming from this machine. Let's give it a try. I go back, I try to reload this page, and it once again won't work. That is because inside of iptables we set a rule that doesn't allow this machine from accessing this website. Now to remove the rule, we can simply type once again sudo iptables-flush, which will remove all the current rules, as we can see right here. And when you set up rules, you can be as detailed as setting up a certain port and not just the IP address. For example, you can type sudo iptables-i, and let's go with the input chain once again. And then you can use the protocol to be TCP only and destination port to be port 80. And you once again, let's say you want to drop these packets. So this time, if I run -l command, we will see that only over TCP, over port 80, it will drop all the packets coming from anywhere. Now, we could have also specified an IP address, but it doesn't really matter. You already saw how you can do that. This particular command will only block on port 80. So for example, if some other IP tried to visit SSH service, for example, it will still work, but port 80 won't work. Let's give it a try. If I reload, it doesn't work. It won't load this page. Okay, so those would be some of the basic commands that you can run with Iptables. Of course, if you want, you can always use the help menu to figure out if there is anything else of interest to you, and there are a bunch of different options right here, and some of them are not really explained that well, so perhaps you can also give a try to manual Iptables, which will open the manual for entire Iptables tool. This is usually much easier to read, and it does explain in much more details each and every option that you can use. So just type man Iptables and it will open the manual with all its available options. Now once again, one last important command is, in case you want to save these rules, you can type sudo /asbin/iptables-save. This command will save all the rules that you've set. Now, since in my particular case I do not want to save them, I'd rather flush all the rules that I created, so I'm currently left with no rules at all. Okay, so this was the hardest one to use, mainly because it's used over the command line and it does have a bunch of different options that we can set, but once you get used to it, with a bunch of different chains and policies and options to block out certain ports or IP addresses, you will find it rather easy. Okay, awesome. Now that we looked at the default filtering firewall on Linux system, let's take a look at the same default firewall on Windows systems.